of karma is just taking that to a higher dimension. I said we have to learn to behave. Why? Because we want our freedom. Rise, oh my soul, in freedom. Good morning to those online. Well, this is a pretty ponderous subject, but the question on Sunday morning is always, how does it apply to us? How do we take all of this and get something out of it for how we lead our own lives? What's going on here with the law of karma? Well, basically, it's that we are here and we are subject to the laws of the universe. We're subject to the give and take of how this world is put together, how it's been materialized. And we've all come from God, and the universe that was created by the intelligence is very mathematical, very systematic. It's all put together just so. And as the cycles of time go by, our scientific minds figure out this aspect and that aspect of what's going on here. They tend to think a lot of it is just a big accident, but it's becoming pretty clear that there's some intelligence going on. But what does it mean to you and me in our daily lives that this idea of karma is part of our existence? I would say that basically it's a matter of our attitudes. You know, we can think that karma is bad things that happen to us in this particular lifetime, but all it is ourselves coming up against ourselves. Every time there is something that happens, it's just us who have done something in the past lifetime. And those all add up and seem very random because we have no memory. You might want to say, well, that's unfair, but it's not really unfair. We wouldn't really want to know all the things, all the mistakes that we've made. And the mistake is thinking that we're independent from God. God doesn't even exist, that we can do what we want. And we come to find out gradually that there's repercussions, there's consequences. You see this in the raising of children very early on. Children need to discover there's consequences. When you climb up on something, you have to be careful because you may fall off of it. When you put your hand on a hot stove, you may get burned. And children, all of us as children, learn all those things. Well, we keep learning those things, that there's consequences to our actions. And often, it comes down to really little attitudes that we carry, and the attitudes express themselves particularly, but they come from a sense of our separateness. They come from our sense of thinking that we can stride around in the world and do what we want. I have a friend, Anne. Many of us remember Anne Horton and love her dearly. And she tells a wonderful story of how she sort of saw through an attitude that she had and how it released her. So I want to tell this story. Anne is a wonderful writer. And I remembered the story yesterday, and I emailed her and I said, Annie, you've got to give me this in your words. I should have brought my cell phone to read it to you, but I'm going to try to get it out there. So one of her habits in traffic was when someone made a rude remark or yelled at her or gave her the finger or whatever they did, she would give them back just the same. She had that habit. And then one day, She must have been ready to let it go because she was in traffic and she was out by the Alderwood Mall where there was a lot of traffic. And she was at one of these places where it's a four-way stop, so you have to be very conscious and very careful of who's next to you and how they're moving and what they're doing. And this fellow, must have been a good day because she said the driver's windows were down. So this fellow shouted at her, "Learn to drive, lady," and then a few other expletives. And Anne just found herself not going in the same direction. She said it was so bad, it was such a bad energy that it made her laugh. And she shouted out the window, "Do you talk to your grandmother that way?" That's what came out of her mouth. And everybody they had their windows, everyone heard it, and they applauded and they laughed. And that fellow had to sit there until it was his turn. She said it's just really totally taken that very bad habit away from her. And I think I wanted to share that story because that's the way karma, operates in our daily lives. And that's why we have to watch ourselves. We have to not do what we usually do when we're afraid or confronted. We have to try to find another way to express our deepest reality. And that's the trick. There was a story from India about a grandmother trying to teach her little grandson about the ways of the world. And she wanted to give him some sense of what it meant to be attached, really attached to things and have to have that toy or want to have a toy and getting attached to it. And she thought, and she said, "Okay, come here and sit in this rocking chair and hold on very, very tight to the rocking chair. And then Grandma's going to come and try to pull you out." And so she came and tried to pull him out of the rocking chair, and he held on and he held on and he held on until he finally released his fingers. And she said, "What did that feel like?" And he said, "That hurt, Grandma, that really hurt." And then she said, "I want you to sit in the rocking chair again, and this time, when I put my arms out to you, I want you to just come to me." And so he did, and she just lifted him sweetly off the chair. How did that feel? That was easy. And she said, that's what it feels like to be attached. And that's so often the root of our karmic experiences that bring us unhappiness. We're so attached to things of this world. We're so attached to things of this world that we forget that we are part of the world that God created. God, in fact, became all of us, and he became this world. So it doesn't need to be foreign to us unless we hold on to the idea that we can do whatever we want. That's when we get into trouble. So we have to have the right spirit. We have to absolutely have the right spirit. And the right spirit is sometimes just curiosity. What's going on here? Why am I not finding happiness? What am I not in tune with? What am I not perceiving? And when we choose for ourselves, we choose bondage because the law of karma is inexorable. It always works. When we take to ourselves, we're going to have to experience issues around that because that's not the way God set things up for us. Let's see where I want to go. And it's just so interesting. I remember myself, I was a bit rebellious about rules and laws and things that tried to keep me in boundaries that I didn't care for. And I begged my father to let us go to a prep school for 2 years of high school. And this was a very proper New England prep school, a Northfield school for girls. It was actually a wonderful place. But they had some interesting binds on the girls and behavior. It was called etiquette. And one of the things they absolutely, you always had a big older lady at your table, and then all the girls. It's probably always a table for 12. This is one of the rules. You always passed everything to the left. Okay, now just imagine this. The plate of bacon, excuse me, we're eating that at that time, was right here. And somebody wanted it. It had to go all the way around the table to get to that second girl down there. And the eagle eye was on you if you didn't do it properly. And of course, there's all kinds of rules like that keep us in place, and we rebel. The law of karma is just taking that to a higher dimension. Yukteswar said we have to learn to behave. Why? Because we want our freedom. Bondage or soul freedom. And we want our freedom. We don't know where it comes from until we do. And here we talk about how that freedom comes to us. It comes to us when we recognize and relax into God. Because God is what is happening here. God is the name of the game. I remember years ago when I was living in the Ananda House in San Francisco, and it was directed by Jyotish and Devi, our spiritual directors at that time. And I was struggling. I was struggling with understanding my brother. He was retarded. That's the term they used in the 50s. Minimal brain damage, and it had a lot of effect on his behavior. And I was now his ombudsman. I was living in San Francisco, he was living in Oakland, and I was kind of in charge of representing the family. And I began to feel a lot of heartache. And I finally sat down with the Jyotish, and he said, and this has to do with other people's karma and seeing other people's suffering. He said to me, you can't understand his karma. You can't fix his life. You can only love him. There it is. And when we see other people and our hearts go out, we never want to take away their suffering. We just want to say, we understand. Because that suffering is the way of waking up. It's our pathway to liberation. And when we get higher in our spiritual attainment, I guess you'd say, then we don't feel the suffering as keenly. But because we're understanding that God is the center, then as Swami Kriyananda illustrated in his life, all the suffering that he experienced was transmuted into bliss. It's a very strange world we're in. It's a very strange thing we're being asked to do. It's incredibly curious. But it's the best game in town. It's the only one that will bring that deep, deep, deep sense of happiness. Yogananda says we must accept our karma pleasantly. It's so like him to put those two things together. Big issues, accept it pleasantly. That's so like our master, just absolutely sweet. Just right there, at our elbow. It's going to be all right. You just get through this with the right attitude. Let's see where I want to go. Sorry, lost track. There's another story that I want to tell that illustrates karma. A friend had a very dear friend who worked in an office, and she worked in an office, and they were both very busy. But every once in a while, they would take time to phone each other, even on a busy work day. That was the part of their friendship, part of their the way they were with each other. And so one day this friend called to the office, and the fellow answered, and he said, "What in the world are you doing calling me at the office? You should be, this isn't the right thing to do." And then he slammed the phone down. Well, she was shocked. Well, she was shocked, but she was highly offended. How dare he treat me this way? See how it starts? How dare he treat me this way? And she tried to call back, but of course, she knew he was a busy person. The phone was, tied up. Time went by. And this person said, "Wait a minute, that was a very strange reaction he had. I wonder if he's okay." So there's the moment when the karma is being worked out. There's the moment when a change has happened. Not reacting, not thinking it's all about you, but having a moment to say, "I wonder what's going on." Finally, she got through, and she said, "Are you okay?" And he burst out crying and told her that there were a lot of difficult things going on at work and difficult things going on at home. And they had a wonderful conversation. There's many, many opportunities when we forget ourselves, think of God, and think of others. I did have another story, but I can't find it. Too bad. Well, I think I'd like to complete this talk by sharing from a letter that Swami Kriyananda wrote to the community after a series of great trials for the community and for him, and especially his health. And he wrote something he called the Song of Gratitude. And in it he said, "I think that had I not faced these major tests, Ananda too, you all, would not have risen to the heights of grace that I see you've achieved. These tests are necessary for all of us, really, for they give us the strength and the inspiration we need to rise to the level God wanted us in for our service and devotion to Him." And I want to complete this by reading an affirmation. I am a child of eternity. I am ageless. I am deathless. I am the changeless spirit at the heart of all mutation. Thank you.